Was to get back. No, well, I went 240 around Sycamore View and probably a little quicker. I was you never know what happens.
No, I went Friday They will be very It's not worth the money. Might be a little. Talking about.
we're trying to figure that out. We can close down there, or as long as she and I are together, they can send a mobile notary.
Yeah.
So, but we may be able to, if we can close a little early, a day or two early down here, then come up here, take care of it there. Yeah, yeah. On quick. Okay.
Documents to the next attorney. So what same day, like day after.
Yeah.
And others.
Yeah, they can do that. All the logistics. It shouldn't be so complicated. It shouldn't be so complicated.
I know it.
2025.
They
Yeah. Yeah. And we might do that.
What happened?
I'll be glad we called that. All right, well, it's time to get started. On Wednesday, we had finished up with, I guess it's about chapter 1 there.
Hello.
Yeah, right. I'm used to that. I've got kids. Now, we finished up, got through chapter 20 on Wednesday. We're still in this section where we're dealing with judgment against the nations. And chapter 20 is kind of a break. Very strange thing happens in chapter 20, where Isaiah is told to walk around naked and barefoot for 3 years as a sign. And we just mentioned at the end some of the unusual signs of the prophets. And you read Isaiah 20 with modern eyes, and it's really weird. It's really weird. And you think that, this probably, would have made him, especially an outcast, doing this. But if you get into the culture, and this is common, this kind of thing is common with the prophets and how they would demonstrate a message of some sort. And so you've got a lot of strange things that the prophets do, right? If you think that the prophets were just sort of in a room writing things down, that's not what they were doing. So you have this unusual sign by Isaiah. Hosea maybe is another one that you remember. He was told to marry a prostitute and to convey to him how the Lord feels through unfaithfulness. And then, if that wasn't strange enough, then the children that she bore were given some really strange names to convey that kind of disappointment of God. Jeremiah, there are several strange things that he does that he's told to do. Jeremiah, he wore a yoke on his shoulders for a time to symbolize captivity and oppression. That certainly, these kind of things would definitely get people's attention. For the most part, the prophets, they're going to be ignored because they're bringing a message that is not welcomed. The prophets come as a generally is a precursor to God's punishment. So they're not going to be listened to typically. But a sign like this might at least get people's attention. Ezekiel, you've got him laying on his side for 390 days. I just point this out to say that as weird as Isaiah 20 reads, it fits. It fits with the kinds of things that God had the prophets do to convey information, to warn the people that they were teaching and preaching to. But I did want to, we didn't get to this, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. One of the points that the author made in reference to Moab. Moab was judgment is pronounced upon them, but Moab is told to make peace with Judah. And in making peace with Judah, they're told that they could receive help and mercy. But they don't want it. So they don't they don't do that, right? They don't, God tells them to send a lamb and to Judah. They don't want it. So I thought it would be good, one of the points that the authors make is about this relationship between righteousness and mercy that's demonstrated through Moab. So, can you describe the relationship between righteousness and mercy? Do you need more qualifications on that?
You can't have mercy without righteousness.
You can't have mercy without righteousness, okay. Well, how do you get righteousness?
Mercy.
Following God's will.
I mean, it would be in alignment with God's will. That's righteous.
Okay. There's a response that's always required. Now, there's a technical explanation that you can give biblically, but it's also demonstrated in just how God deals with the nations. And we need the righteousness of God in order to have a relationship with Him. And the way Paul explains it is that is the righteousness of God is received through faith. Through faith in what He did through Christ. So faith is the key trait. Faith is the hallmark. It is the mark of a child of God. They believe, and that belief that changes everything. Right? That's our status changes. That's that relationship with God. It goes from someone who's an enemy to someone who's adopted into family. And the fact that change can occur is a demonstration of the mercy of God. Mercy cannot be earned, right? If you could earn it, it wouldn't be mercy. Mercy is pardon for guilt. And this is why James, in one of those famous lines, he says that mercy triumphs over justice. Because if justice is served to us, then we have no hope. We're all condemned because we're all guilty. Moab was guilty. There was no question about that. You read Isaiah's assessment. There's no case for them to make. But God was willing to pardon them through an act of mercy. They would make peace with Judah. And I think there might even be some symbolism in that for us, in connecting the Messiah. So, in order for us to receive the righteousness of God that we so desperately need, we have to respond to it. And in responding, He grants us what we don't deserve. He grants us mercy. Anything else you'd like to mention about that? I had a professor in college once, and anytime he would get to making some point, and he would say, that would make a good thesis. And that's what I think about describing the relationship between righteousness and mercy. We could say a whole lot about it. But it was I thought the author did a good job in trying to call that to our attention in the instance of Moab. The other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is, what does it mean to trust the Holy One of Israel? And this is stated over and over. The Holy One of Israel is the primary way God is described in this text. And the fundamental problem that we have with Israel and all the nations is a misplaced trust. What are some of the things that Israel has put their trust in?
Foreign powers, themselves,
Okay.
their hierarchy, things of that nature, their position, things of that nature.
The idols, the alliances, that comes out a lot. They're trusting in their military alliances that they can make with other nations to save them. What else have they put their trust in?
The big thing to me was the expectations they felt as far as their trust. They had expectations for their trust.
Well, yeah, what they were hoping to get out of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Rather than just relying on God and trusting whatever will happen will be good, then they actually, like I said, expected and reacted on that.
Yeah.
Put God in a box.
Put God in a box. Yeah.
If you don't fit that mold, like he's saying, then clearly you're not God. You're not coming in like a king. You know, Jesus didn't come in like a king. And so for them, that picture was you should be reigning over everybody with power and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
they're like, no, we don't want that kind of king.
Yeah. That problem.
Look lowly.
Yeah, that problem just persists all down through time.
Right.
And maybe to what you said then about the expectations, that gets into sort of the lifestyles that they live, because that's criticized, that's critiqued through and through. That I think the term that keeps coming up is frivolous. They live frivolously, and they're just looking to take whatever they want from whomever they want and however they need to take it. And so their society's pretty corrosive. And so there's injustice. Incidentally, justice is part of the explanation for what righteousness is. So there's just the opposite that's characterizing how they interact with each other, taking advantage of each other, trying to get an upper hand. It's sort of life's about them. Life's about just what you can get out of it, and so that's evidence that they have not been trusting the Holy One of Israel. So you have here in this phrase, you have the idea of trust, which is significant, and I think also the idea of holiness is significant here as well. Go ahead,
Maybe
Jeff.
you can draw some parallels or some differences between grace and mercy. Because I kind of feel like, regardless of whether or not you're righteous or even Christian, in society you look at judges, a large portion of them are not. They still are pulled to that position to make a judgment based on each person's actions, and oftentimes based on what they did. They may earn mercy rather than the full conviction of the law.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to grace, that's righteousness in the mind of aligned with God. You're receiving something that you did not earn.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the difference I see between people's ability to actually maybe harness good, even though they're not aligned with God.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, you'll see staples of that in people that are doing wrong, or even faiths that are doing wrong. There's some good things in there that do line up with God's thing, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can look at it, we all everyone benefits from the grace of God. And sometimes the idea of common grace. So there's grace that everyone enjoys. I mean, I think Jesus touches on it when he just says that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And maybe you've come across people who, they're not Christians, but man, they're great people, and they're moral people, they're ethical, they're good neighbors, and they're benefiting from this common grace of God. The difference is they haven't received God's grace that saves them, and that grace comes through faith in what He accomplished through Christ and obedience. And so that's people can really get deceived in that, because they think, what do I need what you're talking about, because I'm a good person, that kind of thing. So
They get the importance of a relationship.
right. So if you think of these are really big ideas, right? When you're talking about grace and righteousness and mercy, if you were to put this sort of in a flow chart, you start with love. You start with love. God is love. We're told that very simply, but that has a wealth of meaning, right? God is love. How do we know that God loves us? We know that He loves us because He's given us gifts. That's grace. Gifts, right? Love is known through grace, and when grace is received, the result is mercy. Love, grace, mercy. And I didn't think that up. You find that expressed in Scripture. You find that when Paul will, in his introductions, when he offers a blessing of grace and mercy, grace and peace. I mean, Paul is not random. It's not word salad that you're reading. There's a logic to it. Anyhow, anything else about what it means to trust the Holy One of Israel? All right. Well, I thought it was important for us to note that. Chapter 21. Chapter 21. So here the downfall of Babylon is described. That's going to happen. And one of the things that stands out here, at least to me, and we pulled this out in one of the other prophecies, where Isaiah is not happy about what he sees and what he's communicating. He's not happy about the judgment of God, the wrath of God being poured out among the nations and among God's people. And you especially see that in what he says in verses 3 and 4. He says, "Therefore, my loins are filled with anguish. Pangs have seized me. Like the pangs of a woman in labor, I am bowed down so I cannot hear. I am dismayed so that I cannot see. My heart staggers. Horror has appalled me. The twilight I longed for and have been turned for me into trembling." That this is something that just weighs very heavily on him. And sometimes maybe in reading a text like this, we can kind of lose sight of it. That we're just reading something that some guy named Isaiah wrote. And we lose sight of the character of the man. And I think we said that the prophets, the messages that they had must have weighed on them heavily. We said with the exception of Jonah, so we know. But Jonah learned. He learned better, I would say. But this is not a Isaiah just running around the countryside all excited and proud that everybody's getting wiped out. And that's not his character at all. He has a sympathizing heart, and we probably could learn a little from that. Anything you'd like to mention about how this affects Isaiah? Another
He
thing.
doesn't want to hear it, he doesn't want to see it, he just wants,
Yeah.
it's just too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's all death and destruction. Like there's nothing good about death and destruction, and to have that. This is his life. This is his world that he's dealing with. His life's work is wrapped up in breathing out death and destruction to humans. And yes, there's hope and there's comfort and consolation that we've talked about, but this aspect of it is very hard for him.
Which he was speaking for God.
He's speaking for God. That's a great point. Which tells us what about God?
That he's not pleased, but also it hurts him to actually for the way it's going. Just like as you mentioned before, marrying the harlot and having kids and all that. I mean, that's how Judah, he was perceiving how he was feeling.
Yeah. That's he says it all over Ezekiel that I don't take pleasure in the death of the unrighteous, and so that does give us a sense of his nature. We're supposed to be like him, and learning from that. Verse 6 is another well-known phrase. Go set a watchman. Go set a watchman. Have we heard that before? Go set a watchman. What's that? It's a book. Yes, it's a book.
Harper Lee.
Harper Lee. Thank you. Yeah, I looked it up the other day. Go set a watchman. Yeah, came out not too long ago. Caused a stir, but anyhow, this idea of go set a watchman is, I think again Jeremiah, I think uses the idea of a watchman. Maybe it's Ezekiel. I always get those two mixed up. But the prophets sometimes were considered the watchmen of Israel. So, what does a watchman do?
Watches for danger.
Watches for danger.
And alerts all the
Psalms 130 talks about what a watchman does.
Pardon?
In Psalms 130 it talks about what a watchman
Okay.
does.
Yeah.
The sun to come up and like that is danger.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very important function in the ancient world, especially. I mean, we have watchmen. We just, we don't think of them. They're not on a city wall. A lot of them are deep underground behind a screen. But we have watchmen. You're okay. There you go. You know one. So he says, go set a watchman, and then the watchman says, from that perspective, tells them what he sees, and what he sees is not good. In this rest of the chapter, you have Babylon, Edom, and Arabia are going to fall. That's what is seen by the watchman. So there's the warning. Again, the idea of warning. Imminent danger is coming. And Babylon, of course, we've talked about them and their significance in the ancient world, and even the symbolism that's used in the New Testament. They're the symbol of evil. Edom had a long storied past, tracing their roots to who? Remember? Esau. Okay. So their hatred of Jacob goes all the way back there. Now, Jacob and Esau eventually worked things out, but their families did not. And so there are several points throughout their history where they are very antagonistic toward Israel. And then Arabia, this collection of tribes that are in the region, they're going to fall as well. So again, we just continue to see that no one is being spared from the judgment of God. So, chapter 22, it's as the other nations fall, Isaiah asks Question. In verse 1 it says, what do you mean that you've gone up, all of you, to the housetop? You're full of shoutings, tumultuous city, exultant town. Your slain are not slain with the sword or dead in battle, and your leaders have fled together without the bow. They were captured. All of you who were found were captured, though they fled away. What's happening? What's Isaiah critiquing them for? As they see the other nations fall.
They're rejoicing and having a party.
Okay. Yeah, they're rejoicing. They're having a party.
Not reflecting on themselves and their condition.
Yeah, they're excited about, happy about all of this. And whereas it should have been a warning. Now, mind you, that we have already read up to this point where judgment's been pronounced against them. And so as you see these other nations fall, that's not reason to rejoice. That's proof that, hey, we're next. That's not at all how they take it. And so Isaiah just asks, why are you celebrating? Same kind of thing happened earlier when, in a little prophecy to Philistia, Isaiah asked the same thing of them. Why are you happy? Why are you celebrating what's going on? And well, when you put your trust in the political alliances and you look out at the surrounding nations and things seem to be working out, going in your favor politically, then you're happy. The problem is that there is something bigger. There is something more powerful that's happening in the background, that the kings of the earth have no say in, who aren't going to stop. So on one hand, while it may look like things are working out well for you, that's not what's happening at all. Also, when you get down to, toward the end of the chapter here, there's a contrast that's described between two men who were part of Hezekiah's government. So in 15 to 25, we're told about this man named Shebna, and he was a government official, and he was a pretty important person as far as he was concerned. What did he do? How do we know he was this important person?
He was over the household, is what we're told.
Okay, yeah, he was over the household. What did he do?
Made himself a sepulcher and he carved a tomb for himself.
Okay, yeah, he made a tomb for himself. Now he's not just making, planning for his final expenses so his kids don't have to deal with it. That's not what's going on. It's as if he's making a shrine to himself. He represents the problem of pride. And so what's God's response to it?
He'll throw him away violently.
Throw him away violently. Throw him away violently. Now, earlier we've seen the same kind of thing said, where in reference to kings, I think it was said of the king of Assyria, same kind of thing. The king of Assyria, he wasn't going to get any kind of honor in his death, and it was told to him that you're going to be left for dead on the battlefield. You're not going to get it to him. And that's essentially the same kind of thing that happens here. Like, you want a shrine for yourself so you can be held in high regard among the people, long after you're gone. And God says, no, that's not going to happen at all. You're going to be taken away violently. And so that's what's described there. And then,
It's like he's setting himself up to be remembered even after his death, almost like the pharaohs or whatever.
yeah, sure.
And but then God's telling him, no, you're just going to be thrown out like the garbage, Yeah.
It is amazing how important people think about themselves. And we lived not very far from Canton, Ohio, and in addition to the Pro Football Hall of Fame is what was like one of the first really big shrines that was made by a president when McKinley died. It's a pretty impressive thing to go and see the way it's all laid out. And of course, he was assassinated, and so the people after him tried to make. They made a shrine for sure, and it's, you know, you can go and see all of that. But there's plenty of examples of that, right? Whether you're talking about ancient history or something more modern, important people, you know, want to be remembered. And Eliakim, though, he's described as just the opposite of all of that. Eliakim is someone who's humble, and so God is going to establish him in his work, in his role, and so he's going to be remembered for all of the right reasons. And so there's just a contrast here. Eliakim also shows us, and this is happening during the reign of Hezekiah, and Hezekiah, during his rule, things went well for a time. And there was a bit of a restoration that happens with Hezekiah, although you know, he still goes wrong after the fact. Hezekiah does, but it does show you that there are still people who are faithful, who are trying to do what's right, and who receive the approval of God. So he's told essentially that his position is going to remain, and whereas Shemba is going to be cut down. So you think about, you know, Jesus talking about pride and humility. God will exalt the humble, and humble will be exalted. Right? That's through things that Jesus taught, and it definitely shows this common problem that we have as humans, the problem of pride, self-importance, and you know, God is the one who is owed everything, and the sooner we get that into our heart, you know, the better we'll be able to serve Him and to do His will. Anything else about these two men, the contrast that they represent?
The phrase about Shebna is interesting. It says, "I'll throw you like a ball into a wide land. There you will die." It implies that this great tomb he prepared for himself, he wouldn't even get.
Right, and I think that's what it means. That he's not going to be there.
Yeah.
And again, when you think of these invasions and the desolation that comes, that, I mean, people that died and were left where they lay, and just consumed by the heat and jackals of the desert. There's nothing. It's an unceremonial end, to be sure.
And they're looking against his job and his robe and then his. I don't know about the tomb or anything.
Right. Yeah.
In verse 22, it also talks about opening and shutting. It sounds like what Jesus says to Peter about the keys of the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds similar.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that's interesting.
In verse 23, it says, "I will fasten him as a peg." Is he talking about Eliakim there in the peg?
Yeah, I think he's showing that there's some discussion about like how I think it's really getting how he's going to be remembered. That God's going to be the one to make sure he is remembered for the right reasons. Whereas Shemba was trying to exalt himself. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what that is about. Chapter 23. So we're back to Tyre. Do you remember what what this nation was known for? Its geography has everything to do with it.
They were big traders.
Okay.
They were sort of the market of the world.
Yeah, big traders, market of the world. So it, trade routes flow in through them. So you could imagine them being an economic power, a banking center, as any any port nation or port city would be. And really, everybody that is able to engage in trade is going to, they're going to benefit from what happens from the business that goes on in Tyre. And so their downfall is going to come as a shock, and it's going to have a ripple effect, right? And we understand that because of the way our world functions, and how local and world economies are connected and interrelated. And when you disrupt one, it affects all others. And so here, and what God does with Tyre, I think, is not just about them, but it's also about how these other nations who are trusting in their wealth, trusting in their economic power, are going to be negatively impacted. Now, prophecy goes on to talk about how eventually they'll come back for a time, so there would be a resurgence. But what is stated in verses 8 and 9 is what I've pulled out. It says, "Who has purposed this against Tyre? The bestower of crowns, whose merchants were princes, whose traders were the honored of the earth. The Lord of the hosts has purposed it, to defile the pompous pride of all glory, to dishonor all the honored of the earth." So in the question that's asked, it's who's doing this? Tyre is they can look to what they have made and the kind of nation that they have and take credit for all of that. And again, pride remains this central problem. But the Lord of hosts has purposed it. And we've seen that language used specifically, the idea of purpose, that the Lord purposed to do this. And when things are purposed, that cannot be altered, affected, or undone. And he characterizes, right, the nation that is his purposed against. You're going to defile the pompous pride of all glory, to dishonor all the honored of the earth. So he's trying to convey important lessons about himself and our position as his creation. Certainly there's nothing wrong with a nation being successful, right? There's nothing wrong with a nation becoming wealthy through industry and using whatever assets and resources they have at our disposal. Very basically, as humans, right, the earth was placed into our hands to use for our good and to God's glory. So they had done that. And there's nothing wrong in doing that. The problem was the attitude that they had in doing it. It was, well, look what I did. Look at who we have become. And the thinking that, well, we'll just always be this way. And so they become diluted. And that's one of the perils and dangers of success generally. There's nothing wrong with success. As Christians, we should be the most industrious people in the world, quite frankly. With the right attitude, then we're able again to use what we make to be a blessing to ourselves, to help other people, and to honor God. 24 to 27. We've got a little time left. This is a larger section. So that's in dealing with all of the nations. We've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure you've forgotten most of it. There's a lot to keep up with, and there is quite a bit of redundancy. It is interesting that regardless of the nation or the specifics They all seem to have the same underlying problems. And, well, we can connect to that because we continue to have the same underlying problems of pride and misplaced trust.
We're all human.
We are all human, that's right, and that's proof of it. Here, this section,
Can I?
oh,
Before we
sure,
finish,
sure.
I thought it was interesting at the end of the 70 years that they were given hope.
Tired?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that they're gonna do some awful things, but then they're gonna change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I thought that was a.
Yeah, there's gonna be
You don't say that about everybody, you know.
well, there's gonna be a resurgence, yeah. I'm not so sure about how much they're gonna change.
But he said her merchandise.
Yeah,
will be wholly
I'm not
to the
sure. I
Lord.
mean, the way he says that she'll return to her wages and will prostitute herself to the kingdoms of the world.
That's what I wanted to ask about it, because I'm confused in this part, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a, again, that gets to an attitude of, their attitude in business. It's just, they're just all about making money.
But it does say, but her merchandise will supply abundant food and fine clothing for those who dwell before the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like God has set it towards his purpose.
Mm-hmm. That may be it. I'm not sure. It is.
It's confusing.
It's conflicting.
But you don't hear that the others. There's no thing about 70 years and then you're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Anybody have any thoughts about that section? I thought somebody would enlighten us.
It could be that God always has a plan to help his people one way or another, and the entire sort of marketplace for that general region that is God putting in place. Even though they're not the best people,
Yeah.
that eventually Israel's going to need goods and things from other places. I mean,
Yeah.
somehow, and that's just God putting that in place. Saying, hey, later on they're going to come back, and deal with the nations again and trade and whatever.
Yeah,
And my people are going to benefit from that.
it. Sure.
So just note that for later or something.
Yeah, no.
Mark down your notebook for later.
Yeah. And Israel's close to them. They're not too far away from them.
They had relations with them for
Long time.
for a long time. So that would be my guess anyway.
That very well could be it. That later on Israel's going to be able to benefit from that.
Which is the opposite for the final results of Babylon and Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff.
There's nothing left.
Nothing
Yeah.
left, and there's not going to be anything.
Yeah, and that's true. And we've seen where it was said that the idea of remnant is there's not even going to be a remnant left. And we're here with Tyre. There's going to be yeah.
Well, I do have a study note that says, Israel will one day receive the wealth of the nations, and it says, see the note on, chapter 60, verses 5 through 11, which I have not read, but
Yeah.
it may
Yeah.
give you some enlightenment. I haven't read that far yet.
Yeah.
Well, and my title of my chapter heading for 60 is the glorified Zion.
Yeah, when you get into
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was just a unique difference from all the others, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that Israel and Tyre had a lot of antagonistic encounters with each other like they had with a lot of the other nations.
They actually work together. I mean, Solomon actually had the king of Tyre.
So I just wondered if that's part of the difference too.
Yeah.
With all the other nations that.
And Tyre is going to want to make nice with everybody, and that's, I think, part of what the idea of talking about being like a prostitute. That they're very transactional. That their trade is their ethic.
And yet God can use it for his glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when you think about also setting up for what's gonna happen 400 years after the return, you know, when Jesus comes and there's the gospel that needs to be spread, how do they get from place to place from port cities like Tyre?
Yeah.
So there has to be something there.
Mhm.
God uses evil things for his good and his purposes.
Mhm. Yeah. All right, well, we are about out of time. 24 to 27, though, if you take a look at that, for Wednesday, it's more of a summary of everything that we've read. It's sort of a reaction or a response to it. And so we'll work our way through those chapters here beginning on Wednesday. Thank you.
So do you know the
Wiped it off.
Yeah.
Ezekiel prophesied that.
Okay, yeah.
But there-
I don't know if it's there.
I have read, there's just a small village. It was not rebuilt.
Yeah.
Doing okay? So we can.
It was a small village.
Okay? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And you? Okay, you good? Yeah, ready. Okay.
Roll.
Yeah, thanks.
The things are wrapping up for you as far as house hunting
Yeah.
and getting the.
Yeah. Hopefully by the 16th, if not a couple of days sooner, we'll be able to close on everything. So, yeah, we're excited.